Hi, my name's Kathy Skipper and I'm a menopause midwife. Welcome to my channel, The Alchemy of Menopause. In this video, I want to really home in on what I believe is the most important aspect of perimenopause on an individual and collective level in the world today. I want to go into this through the lens of depth psychology. So first of all, let me just quickly outline to you what depth psychology is. It's actually very, very easy to understand. It originated from the work of Carl Jung. And the idea of depth psychology is instead of looking outwards and trying to understand yourself and the world, we look inwards. We go into the depths of the self. We go into the underworld, which is really our unconscious. It's the parts of ourself that are less evident, that we can't yet see. That's all it is, going deep in order to become more whole. So the key to this video is to understand two things. One, how we've ended up after generations and generations of a patriarchal value system to be so out of balance in terms of the world, which I think we can all agree with, the ecology, the social aspects of the world, the political aspects of the world, the distribution of wealth, etc. We have a lot of imbalance in the world. And that imbalance really mirrors an inner imbalance. And that is the imbalance between the masculine and feminine aspects of the self. So today, I think we're all aware that even though you might identify as a woman and be a woman, you have an inner masculine, and vice versa. Men have an inner feminine. So when I talk about the masculine and feminine principles, we all have these principles, whatever gender we identify with, however we identify ourselves. These are just two opposing forces that come together in unison and in harmony, hopefully, in order for us to be the best version of ourselves. Unfortunately, the outer world is very out of balance, and so is the inner world. And so the call from the psyche, which, as I said, is always looking for balance, which is always looking for homeostasis, at menopause, as we go through this maturation process, this transformational process from fertile women into mature sovereign women, there's a natural call triggered by the hormones that trigger physical changes, emotional changes, mental changes, and spiritual changes. There's a natural call from these deep, buried, repressed aspects of the feminine principle for us to be able to reintegrate them, to face them, to acknowledge them, to give them their rightful place, to reintegrate them in ourselves as women, so we become mature and sovereign-like and take our place in the world. But also, this is for a collective level. On a collective level, as we see in the world, we need to balance these forces. So if women, as they go through menopause, are reclaiming the feminine in themselves, this will have an effect in the world. So before we go forward, let's just highlight some of the very common ways that generations and generations of patriarchy have helped to create an imbalance between the masculine and feminine forces, or these two opposing forces that need to come together, a yin and a yang, a consciousness and an unconscious, an earth and a sky, to birth ourselves. So we live in a culture where upward mobility, external wealth and advancement is, is given a lot of energy at the detriment to the cycles, the natural cycles of life. So this thrust forward to always be moving forward, always to be gaining in some way in the external world is part of life. It's the masculine aspect of the psyche. It's a yang energy. It's a going out there energy. It's getting things done energy. And that's fine. But the problem in our culture is that it's at the expense of the cycles of life, of moments of stillness, where reflection and other parts of ourselves can come to the surface. So, and a slower approach to life, honoring the cycles of nature. So those two are out of balance in our culture. The second thing that's out of balance in our culture, which really goes along with this, is this idea that linear thinking, scheduling, time goes in a straight line and only in a straight line, in a linear way of being in the world. Um, and that again is very valid, but it's not valid when it's at the detriment of honoring these natural cycles of life, which are cyclic, which do not go in a straight line, that are sometimes like the moon in the light and other times in the underworld. That is totally natural as well. We need both these things, not just one of them. Thirdly, thinking in polarities, either or. Something's good and the other thing is bad. Something is strong, the other thing is weak. Something is male, the other thing is female. All these polarities are at the detriment of a more feminine paradoxical being, which is this and this is this, and they exist equally and simultaneously. Again, we have this imbalance. And lastly, thinking rationally, thinking about things only in a way that something can be proved scientifically under a microscope in a double-blind test. This is also very valid, but it is not valid if it's detrimental, to another way of thinking, a more feminine way of thinking, which is instinctual, intuitive, embodied knowing, somatic knowing, knowing something not intellectually, but in a deeper part of the self. Both these things are needed in the world today. They're both sides of wholeness. But if we only give value and reward to one of them, the other side of things gets buried in our psyches, gets neglected, gets repressed. And that's our problem. And that's really what I want to look at in this video. So all that to say, the archetypal feminine, which has been in many ways neglected and repressed and buried and denigrated, is a natural part of the world just as much as the masculine archetypes are. And we can find a lot of proof if we look through history, if we look at archaeology, if we look at myths and folk tales, that the feminine has always existed in her own right. And she's characterized by what I've just explained, by paradox, by cycles, by being sometimes up in the light and other times down in the underworld. These, like the moon. Look at the moon. The moon is a symbol of how the feminine behaves in the world. And we need the moon as much as we need the sun. So all this to say that at midlife, at menopause, there is this call from the psyche that is looking to become more whole, that knows that women are working towards their maturity. There is this call to reclaim and reinstate these lost and buried parts of the feminine, these neglected aspects of, first of all, ourselves as women. And in order to become more whole, in order to become the mature women, the wise women that we're destined to become, the sovereign women that we're growing into, we have to reclaim these parts of ourselves. If we don't, we can't become whole. If we don't, we will never become the sovereign women we want to be. And that's why the psyche is asking us to do this. This is why we get these hunches that, I don't like socializing at the moment in the same way as I used to, or I need more alone time, or I'm feeling something coming from deep within me. This is all natural. This is part of the feminine asking to be seen, asking to be reclaimed. So the other part of this is that I believe, and I see this in the work that I do with women, that this part of the feminine isn't just asking to be reclaimed so that as individuals we feel more whole, we understand more about ourselves as women. No, there's a much deeper need. And that's where, again, depth psychology, if you look up the collective unconscious, which actually feeds and influences our personal unconscious, on a collective level, the world needs, in 2025 and beyond, women to turn up with these reclaimed parts of themselves, needs women to turn up intimate with their own feminine psyches and the feminine consciousness, so that this feminine energy can take its rightful place in the world. And that means that this feminine energy can have its role in the very much needed social transformation and change that the world is waiting for. We cannot change in a way that's going to be healthy for the next 7 generations. We cannot change in a way that is going to sustain life on Earth in this very unbalanced patriarchal way. And I do want to remind you, and I say it in every video, when I say patriarchal, I'm looking at a power system that has the paternity like God at the top of a pyramidal scheme, if you like, and then everything else goes down in lesser value from that top God or father figure. That's what's out of balance. And I'm not saying that this is the masculine in its divine and sacred nature. And I'm not saying this is men and uniquely men. Women can be very patriarchal. I'm talking about a power structure. So, this deeper knowledge of the feminine psyche and how to navigate it is, I believe, the primordial role of perimenopause in today's world. Might not have been the same 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, but today it is. Marion Woodman, she described the feminine in this way. She said the feminine is the valuing side, the feeling side of all of us, men and women. It's the body, matter. The feminine is a state of being, of receiving other people, of holding paradox. Whereas the patriarchal world, she goes on to say, lives in either or, this this polarity. The feminine lives in both and. That beingness can be in men and women. So it's that beingness, that honoring of the feminine, honoring of the navigating the darkness of the unconscious, of the cycles of life, of this and, not either or. So the ultimate feminine archetype is the Great Mother, and she is the earth from which everything is born and from which everything dies and returns to. And we can see how society is treating the earth. And the way that society is treating the earth, or the dominant cultures are treating the earth, is the way that we're treating the feminine within ourselves, within the collective unconscious, within the collective psyche. It's mirrored in the external world in the way that we treat nature and the earth herself. Jung himself, he made the connection with the Indian goddess Kali as being a very good representation of the Earth Mother. So she's fierce, she's loving, she's nurturing, she's attentive to humans on Earth. She sustains and nurtures life on Earth and fertility and growth. But she also is very fierce. When something is not right, she has what's called righteous anger. She can get very, very fierce and destructive. And she also devours and seduces when she needs to, and murders. Murders when nature needs that. Creates fires when things are heating up to a point that balance or imbalance that we're talking about has got too much. She's an energy of the earth, and she is always looking for homeostasis, but she's not going to do that in a, oh, poor thing. She does that in whatever way is needed, whether it be nurturing or destruction. So, all that, and I think the point that we can get to and really understand is that in the dominant culture, the archetypal feminine, be her an symbol of Kali, be her symbols of nature or nature herself, be her the feminine within each of us, has been denigrated, exploited, rejected, devalued, and shadowed. She has been treated in a way that we are now paying the price for. So we get back to my main point, and my main point is, for me, the key to a menopausal journey that is conscious of the whole, which is what menopause and maturity of the feminine is also about, is asking ourselves within myself as a woman, how do I get back into balance? What has happened to my feminine? Not just in my own life, but in my mother's life, my grandmother's life, my great grandmother's life. This is where my work with the motherline is so important, because we can't just look at our own lives. Our own lives are very short. Patriarchy and its influences have been going on for thousands and thousands of years, and we are on the shoulders, and we have taken on values and been educated, um, not just by our own mothers, but they were educated by their mothers, and so on. So there are still residues of deeply ingrained patriarchal values that haven't been healed and are living through us. So it's a whole story we have to look at and see what has influenced us, what is still alive. Where is the tyrant within us, the patriarch or the colonizer that is colonizing women from within? This is big work. But depth psychology and the concepts of depth psychology are really there to help us. They've already done the groundwork. You know, Marion Woodman's books were written mainly in the 80s, but they're so uh, ready for us today, because she was seeing through working with women and women's dreams what was coming forward. So that's the work, and that's why I work so deeply with women with these issues that play out within themselves and then affect the collective. And one of the things I read is that women have become daughters of the patriarchy. And that's very frightening. If we're daughters of the patriarchy, we've been educated by patriarchy, we've learned what it is to be a woman through the value system of patriarchy, which is completely not where you're going to learn how to really be a woman and what a woman is. We birth our children for patriarchy. We put patriarchy, because we're the daughters of patriarchy, on the pedestal, and we fit our lives into patriarchy, we fit our values into patriarchy, and we reject what doesn't fit, which is the deep primordial feminine aspects of life. That's where we're at. So becoming whole and mature at menopause necessitates a deep descent into our own underworld, because it's in the underworld, depth psychology, in the deeper parts of ourselves, that is the only place we're going to be able to reclaim the parts that we, our mothers, our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, rejected, repressed, denigrated, and were frightened of, basically, because these parts were not welcome in the worlds that we and they grew up and lived in. So it's this big descent into the underworld that I think the mainstream tries to sort of frighten women off and give alternatives and make menopause into a disease, when menopause is this massive opportunity collectively for women to dive deep, go past their fears into their biggest courageous parts of themselves, face the inner tyrant, and reclaim what is rightfully theirs, the deepest aspects of their feminine, the shadow of their mother lines. And that's when we become whole. When we do this, we suddenly embody as we're supposed to, not dissociated, not embodied in a body that patriarchy has told us to create and define so that we're accepted. No, our true bodies, our true embodiment, the wisdom of our bodies become spiritualized, and we find our voices. So the need is to go beyond, to go deep, which means going beyond rationality. Sorry, my dog's barking. Max, stop. Oi! Beyond logic, beyond order and linear attainment. All those things are surface, and they help us in some ways, but they cannot dominate anymore. We have to go beyond them into the depths of the feminine psyche, into a place where we have to trust the cycles of nature, trust the messages we're getting in a different way, in the imaginal realm, in our dreams, in our intuitions, in our hunches. And that's a beautiful story. When we start to do that, we come alive and we realize the inspiring, creative, wonderful world of the feminine psyche. And I'll also say, and this is for another video, but by diving deeply into the feminine, And in order to do that, we have to go through different stages. One of them is facing the tyrant within us that stops us accessing those parts, or says it's not possible, or says it's too dangerous. But then when we do dive deeply, you know what we access? We access the sacred masculine. And depth psychology, Marion Woodman and other women said, that is the way to access the masculine, is through a deep dive into the feminine. And the sacred masculine, the green man, the man who honored nature and the feminine, has been ostracized equally as women have by this patriarchal value system that has become out of hand, out of balance. So all this is a lot to say, and let me just give you some pointers. I think in the pause in menopause is the most important thing to remember. The stillness, the slowing down, the giving yourself alone time, the time for reflection, meditation, being in nature, looking inwards, doing the art you never did, but the art that comes from the soul, automatic writing, journaling, poetry, things that speak to your soul, learning to navigate like Inanna, leaving behind these outer values that you've used up until now, leaving them behind so you can go deeper into yourself and reclaim the deeper values of the feminine. So this emptiness, this stillness, which is not honored in our dominant culture. We've always got to be busy, on to the next thing, creating wealth, creating this. But menopause is a time for this stillness. We really have to honor it. And to do this, we need to listen. Listen in a different way to the way we've been taught to listen. Listen to our body's wisdom. Feel our feelings. Honor them, that come from deep within, that can be frightening at first, but are actually gifts. Work with our dream images, which are also gifts from the unconscious. Access our instinct and our intuition. All these things that go beyond reason and rational thinking. So if you want to get started and really have a few tools or gifts to begin this work, I invite you to go into my link in the bio and download a free, beautiful meditation where you'll meet 7 of the women who went before you, and 3 of them have beautiful gifts and wisdom for you to begin this journey. And please subscribe to my channel and connect with me through my website, through my classes, just through this channel, and using the comment section. We can do this, but we have to know what we're doing. And that's really what this video is about. I really want you to understand that if we put it into just one sentence, the aim of menopause in 2025 and becoming a sovereign woman is to reclaim what generations of patriarchy have done to the feminine, to reclaim our wisdom, our deepest knowing, our cycles, our intuition, our psychic abilities, our instinct, in order to take our rightful place in the world and be part of the journey of transformation and change so that we have a world for the next 7 generations. Lots of love.